Welcome to this week's edition of Moor Insights Strategy Hot Desk Podcast. It is episode 18. I'm Melody Brue. This week, Patrick Moorhead has been on the road with the 6-5. So I have a special guest, Robert Kramer. He is VP and Principal Analyst of Moor Insights, and he covers enterprise data. Robert, how are you?
I'm great today. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Happy to have you. So Robert is a somewhat new to Moor Insights Strategy team, and like all Moor Insights and Strategy analysts, has a rich background in corporate leadership positions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Robert, you've been with us since August?
That's correct. Yep. So almost 9 months.
Wow. It seems like it's gone really fast, but in that very short period of time, Robert has already earned himself a spot in the top 10 on AR Insights top analysts in the world, which is so impressive, Robert. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Actually, just checked. You are currently sitting at number 5.
Wow. Well, look forward to maintaining it, hopefully, right?
Well, I think I'm pretty sure it's a record of how fast you got there. So super impressive. But we'll get to that in a little bit. On this show, we talk about the tools, trends, and trajectories and people tech, marketing technologies. Today, we're going to add a little bit of data cloud, and we're going to have a little bit of sneak peek about how Robert is going to be showing up more often. This week, we're talking about Salesforce, Trailblazer DX, IBM and Adobe Firefly, 8x8's proactive messaging tool, and an exciting new announcement. So before we get started, usually Pat reads this, but I have to. This show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we will discuss publicly traded companies on the show, the contents of this show should not be taken as investment advice. All right, so we got that over with. So introducing Robert Kramer. So I put in the show notes all of Robert's links so you can check him out. There is a link to our website where you can see, actually, I haven't put on the banners. There we go. Where you can see all of the papers and research notes that Robert has already written in his short time with us. His Twitter, go check him out, link up with him on LinkedIn. There's lots of stuff there. But Robert, why don't you give us like a little bit of your background? You, like me, have been in marketing. I love to have another marketer so we can exchange ideas and kind of shoot the...
Yeah, no, but it's great. It's interesting enough that I've been in the marketing world and the data analytics world, data intelligence, for about 30 years. So when being in the marketing world, ex-CMO and global head of marketing for a company in France, I was really involved in a lot of different campaigns and efforts. But what I was always involved in was working with the analyst and utilizing analysts for all their insights, et cetera, to help my campaigns get better. So kind of going across to the other side, utilizing my experiences to help companies with a lot of their data and ERP needs. It's been pretty exciting.
So you just recently went to Salesforce TDX24. Speaking of data, how was it? Tell me about it.
It's interesting. Salesforce has been around. They just had their 25th anniversary, and I was super excited to go to Salesforce Trailblazer DX. It's really a developers conference, but they had a lot of new announcements regarding data, specifically the data cloud, and some other tools, the data studio, which is the Einstein 1 studio, plus some developer tools. But I was really excited to see how they're actually handling data and how the data quality is maintained. If you kind of go back, since it's been 25 years, I just mentioned, they were one of the pioneers for SaaS solutions, and specifically the first one for CRM. But back when they came out, as far as 25 years ago, ERPs were really the system of record and the source of truth. So when I coming from the ERP world, we actually utilized modules, and a CRM was actually a module. So we were actually able to maintain the quality of data a lot easier. Now, today, data is a lot harder to maintain just because of the fact they're outside of the ERP systems. And so the data was really something I was looking to see how they were going to handle that.
Yeah, so I saw the public beta announcement for Salesforce Einstein, the Copilot, and they showed, and of course, for me, the CX perspective is what I'm paying attention to on the CRM side. And they had Turtle Bay as their customer use case, pulling data across different sources for data cloud, for personalization, case resolution, whatever. From a CX perspective, this kind of looks like the dream use case for generative AI. But is that the case? Is that I'm kind of thinking, some customer use cases are sort of like canned demos. Is this actually the way that it works for everybody?
Well, it's a great question. The one thing about Salesforce is so many great features and benefits, but it all hinges on the data utilization. And the data starts with the foundation layer, the anchor, which is going back to that ERP system. An ERP system and other business applications feed data into something like a data lake, or it's now Salesforce has their data cloud, which used to be their CDP. So if it's put together and the data is maintained properly and it's exactly how it's supposed to be, yes, it will work. But the problem is, how do you maintain and hit that data exactly how it needs to be? So some of my discussions with the Salesforce executives, really the primary takeaway that I had was that the data quality, there's really some holes in it. And how do they maintain that data quality to have a process for data standardization? And that's where I felt was something that fell short. One of the things, I come from a world where we utilize Salesforce back at one of the companies I was with, and I've also talked to colleagues that are ex-marketing people as well. And when we look at the dashboards in Salesforce, it's all pulling data from an ERP system, other systems of record, et cetera, that is the source of truth. But when we look at these dashboards, they're half empty. And they're half empty because the data isn't set up right, or it's not pulling everything we need. There's different fields that are discrepancies. So it causes a problem. So going back to your Turtle Bay question, I think that they had it set up very well, and it was used in a way that they could be proactive and take advantage of the system how it was intended to be. Comes back to the data quality, though.
So they really need to have the whole people, process, technology all in a row for that to really work out the way it's supposed to be.
Correct. I think that one of the things that they've done well is they have a data management strategy, and when companies don't have one, they don't have a data gold standard set up within that organization, which feeds all the data from all the business elements, all the enterprise elements into one source of truth. Then they're lacking a complete strategy to handle their data. When it was back in the ERP days, all the data was contained in a more of a singular functionality. Now it's coming from so many different areas due to the different factors of business applications available. It's hard to maintain a data quality that everything matches up correctly.
Sounds to me like they could use your help to get from that data foundation to data gold standard for data cloud.
And I think that that's something that is really exciting for this year, because most companies do not have an extensive data management strategy. They're looking at it, they have governance in place, and there's a lot of different standard data formats that they could use some help on. We're there to help out, show them what the standards need to be, the tools, the governance, and work with them on that.
Awesome. All right, well, let's move to the next topic, which is IBM generates their Let's Create campaign with Adobe Firefly.
Yeah, I saw that you posted something on LinkedIn that looked really cool. And looks like you've been following Adobe Firefly journey for a while. What's cool about this?
Yes. So we got to put up the image of this.
Yep.
Let me get this up. Okay, I think it's absolutely beautiful. So Adobe and IBM did this pilot with Adobe's Firefly image creator and the creative or the content supply chain in Gen Studio. I love this, and it's kind of like, it sort of feels like this personal journey for me, just because I've been covering this since the very beginning. at Adobe Summit last year is when they announced Firefly. And so I've really seen the evolution of Firefly from like creating these images that were kind of unusable, really. They just weren't quite there. And then I saw at Adobe Max them they announced Firefly 2. And Firefly 2 was just, there's such an important evolution of Firefly 2 that allowed for creatives to really put their own process into the image creation. So Firefly 1 was, the Gen AI of create me a question mark made out of grass. Well, there was no tweaking of it. There was no creative process of like, make it this and do, you could do that with the prompts, but not like the real creative input into it. So then you combine the creative cloud. And I spoke with at Max, I spoke with the senior product director of Creative Cloud. We talked about content supply chain and Gen Studio. There is the amount of content. So as a marketer, that the amount of content, just the velocity that marketers need to produce content lately, this image changing is probably going to make people dizzy. So I'm going to stop that. But IBM made 200 assets and 1,000 marketing variations for this campaign in a matter of minutes. So this was just for me, like, I just thought it was so cool to see. And, when you talk about like the content supply chain, it sort of makes sense. Like, obviously, supply chain, but it's like bringing together from anything from like the ideation all the way into like the measurement, but that it goes through the creation and the collaboration and reviews and production and all of it. So this is a lot of process that goes into it, but with Firefly and with Gen Studio, they're able to produce campaigns like this, which, as you saw, this campaign is amazing, that they can produce all of that in a matter of minutes. Like, that's kind of life-changing for a marketer. But it also doesn't eliminate the creatives from the process, because they really do have like a ton of creative process into these images. So like I said, it almost feels like I had nothing to do with it, to be honest, but it almost feels personal just because I've been a part of this journey, and it like makes me so proud, like, of them, just like I've seen it. I talked to Eli Greenfield, who's their CTO of, I'm not sure if he's CTO of everything, to be honest, but he's, and when we talked about Firefly 2 and the amount of creative control that they give to creatives, I asked him, is this the model getting smarter, or is this you guys getting smarter? And he said, it's a little above. And I thought that was a great answer. And I think it's just so smart, right? Like, I love that it is the model getting smarter, right? There's a lot of really smart people and engineers and working on this to improve it. But it's also just the company saying, we've got to give these people the tools to do their job, not necessarily eliminate them. And, just to kind of back this up with the fact that these are like, they're safe for commercial use images. These images they're not like violating any sort of, copyright or anybody's brand. They can actually be used. So IBM clearly is using them. So anyway, I just thought this was really cool. I could talk about it probably for
It looks really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a marketer, like, look, so across IBM, they have to have images and variations of campaigns. They had 1,000 different variations of this campaign, and it can be used in different countries and in different regions, and the people that are the marketers. Adobe talks about it from the difference of the creators and the marketers. So the creatives have control of it, but then the marketers also have the control of managing the assets so that they're able to kind of tweak them based on countries or regions or campaigns, but the creatives can still be part of the process. So I just loved seeing this campaign. And it's also really nice to see where there's a use case, a customer use case. It's kind of like, going back to the Turtle Bay thing. It's where you can see it happening in real life. This is no longer, for so long we've been talking about AI in theory, right? A lot of us talking about Gen AI. I want to differentiate that.
Right. Now we're seeing it.
People have been using AI for decades, but we're talking about from Gen AI, and especially in productivity, whether it's, art or Word documents. We're talking about productivity. A lot of it's been anecdotal. A lot of it's been, canned demos or whatever. This is an actual campaign that we can see and feel and whatever. But so, like I said, I could talk about this for a really long time, but we should probably move on to the next topic.
No, it's great. I was actually taking a drink out of my Salesforce mug, but actually it doesn't have the logo on it.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you if you got any swag. No swag?
They neglected to hand them out this year. I guess they forgot them. So that was my plain mug, but or glass. But I see you were actually in San Diego, and I heard that the zoo there is phenomenal, and you were there for an 8x8 Analyst Summit. Tell us a little bit more about that and how was the zoo?
Yes, I was. I actually somewhat felt like I was caged in a zoo. I love the San Diego Zoo. Actually, I grew up in San Diego, so I've been going to the zoo my entire life. My family's a big supporter of the zoo. And I will be doing a write-up of my takeaways. And I was actually thinking about this. I wasn't feeling great this week, so I'm a little behind. But I was thinking about this as I was thinking about how to write this up. And I was thinking, 8 takeaways about 8x8. But then I decided it should be 7 takeaways because so much of it was under NDA. So there's a lot I can't talk about. Maybe it should be like 4 takeaways because there was a lot under NDA. But one thing I can talk about is their proactive outreach. And the proactive outreach it's really it's kind of this customer engagement with really personalized messaging campaigns. It's kind of what you would expect. It's like SMS and WhatsApp capabilities that come natively in the contact center. But so if you think about sales and marketing, promotional efforts, things like that, but then it's also emergency weather updates, closures, kind of time sensitive alerts, things like that. But here's one thing where I think this is a really, really important use case. And we had a bit of a discussion about this, and there's kind of I'm not sure if it's an argument, but there's still an open question about how this should be used. And in my opinion, so, just recently with the AT&T outage, there were a lot of people who are calling into their call center and saying, my phone's not working, or, something's happening, or my internet's down, or whatever. Well, something like this proactive outreach, you could send a message to all customers, and then you cut down on thousands, if not millions, of calls coming into your contact center, and you free your agents to do more meaningful work, right? The argument on the other side of that is, why do you want to alert customers to a problem if they don't know there's a problem? Well, eventually they're going to know there's a problem, right? Is my argument. I talked to a contact center customer, not a customer of 8x8, but a contact center customer who one wants to remain nameless because they do real money gambling. And they said that they do this very aggressively when they have outages of their payment processor. So payment processing within real money gambling is actually real money gaming. All gambling is real. Real money gaming is payment processing is very difficult, and it can get shut down for any number of reasons. And when they have a shutdown or some sort of problem, they actually alert their users with this proactive type of messaging because they don't want to flood their call centers with complaints. And they've had they have higher customer satisfaction when they do that. And they say, hey, give us 10 minutes and we'll be right back up and working, because of course they have, the next platform that they can go to. Costs them a little bit more money, that's kind of their, they move on to that, but it does cost them a little bit more money to process it. They're willing to take that hit to keep the customer, right? So rather
But the
than,
right people are calling in, though. The right people instead of the wrong people. They can address the problems a little bit quicker instead of that proactive outreach is fantastic.
right. So if they reach out to them and they say, hey, if you're trying to place a bet, give us 5 minutes. Those customers they're no longer mad because they're like, I'm trying to place this bet and I'm pissed, right? And they might even say, here's a $5 credit for your next bet. You know what I mean? So I think this type of proactive outreach that 8x8 is doing is really, really smart. In Texas, where we have really random weather occurrences, it's like we're not used to it. Things like weather, all of these things. They also have, it's like one to many. You can also send messages and receive messages back. So it's not just those messages where do not reply. So a customer can actually respond, and then that gets routed to an agent and they can get answers back. So this is one of the things that I actually can, like I said, there are lots of things under NDA, but one of the things that I learned about 8x8 at the Analyst Summit, and I think this is one of the things that you can really only get at an in-person event, is that 8x8, they always talk about customer obsession. And I met with some of their customers, and I do think that they are customer obsessed, and I can tell that by talking to their customers. But where I think customer obsession starts with is employees. I think that customer experience starts with employee experience. And what I saw from the 8x8 team is their employee experience, their culture is what makes them able to be customer obsessed. Like their culture as a company you can feel it. You can really see how they work together, how they communicate with one another, how they talk about each other. And again, it's just something I think you can see in person. Maybe this is a bad comparison because they are somewhat of a competitor, but I got that same feeling with Avaya. Their CEO, Alan Masrick, he is culture obsessed. And you feel it when you're with them. And, we always talk about going to be with a company in person for these analyst events. Sometimes it's hard because it's, kind of takes us away from regular work, but it is so important to get that in-person time with the executives, with their customers, with, just that one-on-one time, that in-group time. And I think for me, it showed me that how they become customer obsessed is sort of that employee. It starts with the employees. And I think that
really does.
That part was really important to me to learn from them. There's a lot more that I could talk about, but then I would have nothing to write about. So I'll wait for that.
Well, the thing is, when you start with the employees, it gives them the autonomy to have their own success from that starting point. If they don't want to have success, then they won't be able to emulate that to the customers. So the goal is to see that at the beginning, which is what you're talking about. Your actual employees are your biggest assets, and they're the front line to the customers. And by having what you just said, gives the customer satisfaction at the level that you're talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that culture is driven by the top. They have a new CEO, Sam Wilson. He's ex-military. I tend to think that, I have a brother who's in the military. Well, you live in a military town. I feel like there's something about leaders who have served in the military that kind of create that culture. I may be wrong and I may be biased, but I really thought that there was a neat culture among that team. And anyway, I will save some of it for the write-up, which I'll try to get done soon. But we've got to get to the next very exciting announcement. Like I said, we will be seeing Robert more often, actually, in a couple of ways. And one is a new podcast that we are launching, which is Game Time Tech. You wanna introduce this one?
Sure. It's really an interesting new category that we are launching, and it's sports technology, and it's really the broader sense of what sports technology means to really the sporting brand. So it's the influence of technology to where sports brands, teams, gaming, racing industry are taking advantage of the technology from these companies to better suit their actual games or how the outcomes are being. But it's transforming the industry with different types of analytics, different types of technology. But yeah, what's your opinion on this? Because I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I think, it's funny. Well, let's talk about how this all started. You went to Manchester to see how Snapdragon is doing their sponsorship with Man U.
Yep.
Yeah, and I work with Ring Central, and they have a big sponsorship with the Warriors. They had Steve Kerr speak at one of their analyst events. And they're not just sponsorships anymore. They're true partnerships. And it's really like this now extends beyond sports partnerships to generate this business value beyond like the traditional boundaries. And I think it used to be companies would slap a logo on something, and sometimes the logo was clever, right? Like we've talked about the Gap used to sponsor in baseball fields. They put a Gap logo in that part of the baseball field, which is the Gap. So that made sense. It was clever, whatever. But actually using the technology in the stadium, on the field, like for telco companies to provide better access inside the stadiums, that provides a better fan experience. For better communication on and off the field, call centers for people to be able to call in, payment processing for ticketers. So there's so many things, and it's really just changed brands' approach to sponsorships. It also really changes. It's not just sort of like the external brand. It's kind of the way that companies internally can justify these sponsorships, right? Because there's a reason for them, and I've talked to a lot of vendors about why do you do these sponsorships? And a lot of times, the sales teams or the marketing teams, they want to be able to have the suite at the stadium and bring people in, and people like to do that. But with budgets being tighter and everything, people need to find a way to actually get more value out of that. And so if you choose the right sponsorship that actually could lead to some business value beyond getting that sale because, Jane likes to watch basketball or Henry likes to go to a football game,
Sure.
There's just such an evolution beyond that. And it goes everything from, I've written about F1 before, and we see the amount of technology that goes into these cars, that it translates beyond what goes into the car, right? Like Cadence Design Systems, they put all this technology into cars, but that technology goes beyond into a number of other things where the car may help communicate a more complicated technology, like a digital twin, where the car is able to provide somebody a more simple way to understand a digital twin or an aerodynamic, whatever, So I think it's a really interesting space. I think we're seeing a lot more in it, and I think we can provide a lot of value, and obviously both of us. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, sorry to jump in, but what's interesting is 20 years ago, sports was a manual management, right? And that's really part of this whole thing. Is it's an automated component. So when you're utilizing all the different things that you talked about, these technologies that these IT companies are using to Infold sponsor these different sports. It's kind of a trifecta where the brand, is so it could be IBM, it could be Qualcomm. They're sponsoring like a Manchester United. The Manchester United team gets the revenues or the monies from Qualcomm for the sponsorship on their jersey, but in Fold, the fans get more of an interactive offering because of the wireless smart stadium that stadium is going to be from Qualcomm, and then the data that Qualcomm's able to deliver the team through some advanced analytics help the team manage the players and the performances and things of that nature. So it's a different game today. So it's really interesting from that perspective that there's always these different variances of technology that are used from the sports, from these different technology companies to make it a better impact. So what we're going to talk about? We're going to be talking to different companies and how this all works and why they are sponsoring these different sports and how the ROI at the end is advancing to pay a dividend for everybody involved.
Yep. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be great, and we'll start. Maybe we'll start it next week, or maybe later.
Yeah. So what we'd like to do is potentially be at different stadiums, different events, and talking to all these different companies and what the technology they're using, how that influence is on these different sports, and what those sports are getting out of it, and how it's all working to improve the game.
Yep. Awesome. Well, we are now a little bit over our time. I can't believe this went really fast. So, well, thank you for being our guest host on Game Time Tech, or not on Game. Well, I just saw that on the banner. This was not Game Time Tech. This is actually the Hot Desk podcast. But the next time we do this, it will probably be Game Time Tech. And thank you all for joining us. And if you like what you saw, please hit the subscribe button. If you have any feedback for us, then hit us up on Twitter. If you have anything you want to see on Game Time Tech or on Hot Desk Podcast, also hit us up on Twitter. There are links in the show notes for following both of us, or to link up with Robert on LinkedIn. And thanks for joining us, and have a great week.